hosting a major game. So this video should probably be watched after you've watched the first video, which is talking about the different types of major international games that you can have and the characteristics that they have. So this slide is all about the benefits to a city or a country of hosting a major sports tournament or competition. And this is quite commonly used as a long answer question at the end of the exam. So it's worth knowing this in quite a bit of detail. So let's go and have a look at what is on this slide. So there are obviously benefits as well as drawbacks to hosting an event. The question could be just about the benefits, or if the question says evaluate or discuss, you would have to talk about both the benefits and the drawbacks. So when you get a question on this, make sure you look at the command word, because discuss and evaluate means you have to talk about both of these. So if we talk about the benefits first, first of all, it can improve or increase the morale of a country. It can have this feel-good factor. So particularly when your country or your team are doing well, like we had on Super Saturday in the London 2012 Olympics, when we had 3 gold medals, Jessica Ennis and Mo Farah included, all on the same evening. So that gave everybody a real buzz, and it was on the front of all the newspapers throughout the Olympic Games when it was hosted. So increasing morale, compare that to now where we're kind of all talking about Brexit and coronavirus. Imagine what it would be like if all of the news headlines were about this country and the athletes being successful in a competition that we were successfully hosting. So it definitely raises the morale. It can always raise the status of the country, because obviously through the media, the eyes of the world are on that country for that period of time. And should that competition go well, without any hitches, it would make that country look really good. That in turn will increase tourism. So you might get direct tourism, which means people coming to watch the competition itself, or indirect, which means that people might come because they've seen it on the television and they want to come and visit afterwards. Another benefit is that there are new stadiums built. So, for example, we had the London Stadium built in East London, in an area of the city which previously didn't have much infrastructure there. So that was a real benefit. A velodrome, a cycling stadium, an aquatic centre with swimming. All those facilities were built and now can be used by people who live in London after the event. You also needed to improve the infrastructure of these places. So in order to allow the numbers of tourists to move around the city safely, you need to increase the transport links, new roads, new trains. You also need to build new an athletes village. That can then be used as housing, social housing, once the games are finished. So they could become flats for people who require new accommodation in that area to live in. So there's a definite benefit to building something like the athletes village. If we go back to the top, you can link increased morale to increasing participation. So it's still the idea of from the previous video, this legacy idea, leaving things behind. So hopefully you'll increase participation because people will have watched the success of the athletes and they will want to try and emulate them. There's this idea of increased commercialization. So the country and the city would attract more sponsors and more investment. So more businesses will want to set up their companies in that area because they will see the status of the country. So they will be inspired to then invest in the country, and that might bring new jobs and new opportunities for people that live here. Now, the drawbacks. The main one is the cost. It costs an incredible amount of money. So £17 million in London 2012, and that was in 2003. So now it would cost much, much more than that. And that cost comes from the government, and it also comes from the Athletics Association in the terms of the Olympics. But so the idea that it costs a lot, it even costs a lot to bid for the event. Okay. So this 17 million was just to bid for the event, just to bid for the event. It wasn't meaning that we were going to get the Olympics. So 17 million just to bid for the event. Then actually building facilities and investing in the infrastructure costs billions of pounds. And you can see there, Montreal 1976, we're left with 1.3 billion pounds worth of debt. In London 2012, it cost 9.5 billion pounds to build the whole and to host the whole thing. So it's an incredible amount of money. And a lot of people who live in the area may feel that that money can be spent better off, be spent on things like education, on healthcare, on facilities that aren't sporting facilities that are needed by those areas. Because generally, people would try to look for an area of city to build on which is quite deprived. So arguments and often protests occur in cities where they host major events because the local people would prefer that £9 billion in London's case to be spent on them. You might also get demonstrations elsewhere because that £9.5 billion comes out of the government's pockets, but it's only spent on a small area of London. And so people in Newcastle, in Wales, potentially, or in the Midlands, like ourselves, might argue that that money wasn't spent on us at all. So it can cause a lot of issues, this cost, in terms of bidding for the events, but also for the actual building and the hosting of the event. Some of the facilities that are built, if not planned for correctly, can be left unused afterwards because they're too expensive to run. And there are plenty of examples around the world where high quality athletics and sports stadiums have been left derelict afterwards because they are too expensive to run. There's a good example of the swimming the swimming arena in Athens, just left, and all, there's no water in the pool and it's just derelict. It's been left for ruin. So to build these facilities, you need good planning. You need to make sure that it's cost effective. Then you've got the issue of negative impact on the country if the competition doesn't go quite right. So, for example, if there are demonstrations, if there is a terrorist attack, or if even simply that there are empty seats and the games are poorly attended, that can lower the status of the country. So here, benefit is if it goes well, it raises the status. If it's run badly, it could lower the status of the country. And this idea here of divisions within the country that I've mentioned earlier. So there is focus and attention on one specific city, which then kind of causes other areas of the city to feel resentful. If you have a place, a city, or a country which has sort of human rights issues, so these could be highlighted and can cause demonstrations, and you can have people trying to sort of hijack the competition to make their point clear. So there are negatives as well as drawbacks. Here's a question. Okay, read the question carefully. See if you can answer that question. Pause the video. And here are the answers. So please mark your answer carefully and also make sure you make notes of all of the answers that you could have had you not chosen your answer. So make sure that you are really aware of all the potential answers that could have been given for this question. Like I say, it's often a long answer question, in which case there was plenty here for you to be able to learn and talk about. Okay, thank you.